The shuttle rattled as it pierced the turquoise haze of Clethara's upper atmosphere. Marlon Hayes gripped the armrest, feeling the familiar tremor in his bones, the same tremor that had kept him awake most nights since his wife died. His 12-year-old daughter, Lyra, pressed her forehead against the viewport, wide-eyed, tracing the jagged violet peaks that jutted from the plains like the spines of some colossal creature. "It's unreal," she whispered. Her voice trembled with awe, and he smiled, despite the knot of worry in his stomach. "Yeah," he said, masking his fear. "Unreal and dangerous." Clethara wasn't welcoming. Its sky shimmered in impossible colors, like the auroras of old Earth, but multiplied 100-fold. Winds whipped across the plains, carrying sharp scents of mineral and something faintly sweet, almost like burnt sugar. The shuttle shuddered again as it neared the surface, and Marlon's heart skipped a beat. He had survived pirate ambushes in the Outer Rim, corporate sabotage on Meta Station, and a dozen border skirmishes, but nothing quite like this. The landing pad was a ring of obsidian tiles, slick and glistening under the twin suns. Steam hissed from vents as the shuttle's feet locked into place. Marlon inhaled, tasting the dry, metallic air of Clethara. The planet's beauty was a knife-sharp, mesmerizing, and dangerous. They stepped out. Lyra clutched his hand tightly. "Papa, are there people here?" "Alien people," he corrected gently, scanning the horizon. Shapes moved among the domed building stall, sinewy figures with translucent skin that reflected the sun like oil on water. Their limbs were elongated, and every motion was both fluid and unnervingly precise. Some of them paused and stared, as though sensing the newcomer's heartbeat from across the plaza. The Hayes family had come to Clethara on a contract temporary work at one of the largest interstellar trade hubs. Marlon was a mechanic, and the opportunity was too good to pass up. Still, he had been warned. The aliens of Clethara were known for their unpredictable tempers, and the city's underbelly had teeth sharper than any predator he'd faced in the outer colonies. As they approached the central market, a tremor caught Marlon's attention. Not the wind or the shuttle, it was something living. He glanced toward a slender figure behind the counter of a floating cafe, hands trembling as she arranged steaming bowls of luminescent noodles. Her skin shimmered in a spectrum of blues, and her eyes flickered like distant stars. Something about the way she shook small, controlled quivers made him pause. "Why is she shaking?" he murmured to himself. The alien waitress noticed him staring and froze, as though caught in the act. Marlon felt a tug of instinct, the same pull that had made him protect his daughter from every scrape and shadow. He stepped closer, careful not to alarm her. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. His voice carried warmth. Something rare in this alien city where commerce often outweighed compassion. She looked at him, and for a moment the bustling market seemed to fade away. Then she whispered something that made him blink. Not in a language he knew, but he felt a taut vibration in the air, a pulse in his chest. It was almost human. Before he could process it, Lyra tugged at his sleeve. "Papa, they're looking at us." Indeed, a group of taller, more muscular aliens had noticed their interaction. Their eyes glowed faintly, a warning that Marlon did not need to hear twice. He let out a slow breath, gripping his daughter's hand tighter. Something was off, too off. And yet, for reasons he couldn't explain, he felt an odd surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the trembling waitress wasn't a sign of fear but of something waiting to be revealed. The city's hum grew louder, a living thing with teeth and breath, watching the human father and daughter as they navigated its streets. Somewhere in the distance, a bell-like chime echoed across the plaza, and the waitress's quivering intensified. Marlon knew, deep down, that this was no ordinary arrival. Whatever answer awaited him from that trembling alien waitress, it would change everything. The market buzzed with life, a symphony of alien chatter, metallic clinks, and the hum of hovering transport drones. Marlon gripped Lyra's hand tighter as they stepped between the stalls. Each one sold something more bewildering than the last. Glowing fruits that seemed to pulse with heat, fabrics that rippled like liquid metal, and machines that moved on their own, assembling parts into shapes he couldn't yet name. Papa Lyra's voice wavered. "Do you think they? Like us?" Marlon glanced at the crowd. The aliens' eyes flickered toward them constantly, some curious, others coldly appraising. "Some will," he said cautiously, "others not so much. Their first real encounter came at a small cafe hovering above the ground on transparent legs. A single waitress hovered near the entrance, her hand shaking as she balanced luminescent trays. Marlin noticed the subtle quiver immediately in nervous energy that seemed almost human. He stepped closer. "Are you all right?" The waitress froze, eyes widening as if the simple human concern startled her. Her voice came out in a whisper, almost too soft to hear. I cannot control it." Marlin frowned. "Control what?" Before she could answer, a group of squat, armored aliens approached, their shells clinking like polished metal. They carried scanning devices that hummed ominously. One of them barked in a series of clicks and whistles, and the waitress shrank back, her trembling increasing. "These are the Herok," Marlin muttered to Lyra. He remembered the warnings. From the planetary briefings, Herok enforcers were strict, unyielding, and utterly intolerant of human mistakes. Their presence here meant trouble. One of the Herok's devices glowed, projecting a holographic map of the market, with Marlin and Lyra highlighted. Marlin realized immediately they were scanning for anomalies, anything out of place. His pulse quickened. Papa Lyra whispered, her small hand gripping his sleeve. "What do we do?" He scanned the area, noting the waitress's anxious gaze locked on the Herok. "We stay calm, don't draw attention. Follow me." They maneuvered through the stalls, blending with the crowd. The waitress trailed them at a cautious distance, her trembling now purposeful, almost signaling. Marlin's instincts screamed. She was trying to help, to guide them safely through this alien scrutiny. They ducked into a quieter alley lined with glowing vines that exuded a scent like burnt cinnamon. The Herok scanned past, their attention diverted elsewhere. Marlin exhaled slowly. "Why are you helping us?" he asked, keeping his voice low. The waitress glanced at him, eyes shimmering with strange light, because her words faltered and the tremor in her hands intensified. "Because they are wrong, they will take what is not theirs." Marlin's brow furrowed. "Take what?" Before she could answer, a sharp alarm echoed through the market. Drones swarmed overhead, casting harsh lights. People, human and alien alike. Marlin felt a surge of protectiveness and grabbed Lyra, pressing her against his chest. The waitress's eyes darted toward a narrow tunnel beneath one of the stalls. "This way," she urged, and Marlin didn't hesitate. They slipped into the tunnel just as a drone scanner passed overhead. Inside, the air was thick, damp, and tinged with minerals. The walls pulsed with faint blue light, illuminating the shapes of pipes and conduits, winding like veins. Marlin could hear the faint hum of machinery and the occasional distant footstep. "What's happening?" Lyra whispered. Marlin shook his head, still catching his breath. "I don't know, but we're not safe here." The waitress finally spoke fully, her voice steady despite her hands trembling. "You are not meant to be hunted, but they see you as a threat. They do not understand." Yet Marlin looked at her, confusion and gratitude mixing in his chest. The quiver in her hands, which at first seemed like fear, now felt like a warning, a secret signal of danger. Suddenly, the tunnel shook. Something heavy moved above them. Marlin grabbed Lyra and pressed himself against the wall. The pulse of the tunnel's lighting reflected in the waitress's eyes. And for a moment, he thought he saw something human in her expression. Concern, urgency, even trust. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice barely audible. "They are watching, and they will not stop." Marlin's jaw tightened. Somehow, he knew that stepping further into Clethara's streets would mean stepping deeper into danger, but also closer to answers he desperately needed. Marlin's hands ached from gripping the railing of the tram, his eyes scanning the crowd as Lyra clung to his side. The translucent aliens moved with effortless grace, their limbs bending in ways that defied human expectation. Every glance from them felt like a test, measuring, probing, calculating. "You don't like it here, do you?" Lyra whispered, her small hand brushing his. "I'm not sure anyone could like being watched all the time," he admitted, voice low. "But we don't have a choice, Lyra. We have to adapt." Adaptation wasn't easy on Clethara. The planet's laws weren't written in paper or digital code, they were written in observation and ritual. Humans were a novelty here, curious but expendable. Marlin had hoped his mechanical expertise would earn respect, but that respect had a price: understanding the alien social currents. Learning their unspoken hierarchies, the tram slid to a stop near a massive structure that looked less like a building and more like a living organism. Its walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescent veins, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and citrus. This was the council hall, the center of Clethara's bureaucracy and the place where Marlin's first real challenge would. A PPEARA Gita, four-limbed, carapace-skinned alien named Thrill greeted them. Its voice was deep, resonant, almost musical. "You will enter, observe, follow." Marlin nodded, though every instinct screamed caution. As they passed through the entrance, Lyra's eyes widened. Inside, the chamber stretched impossibly high, filled with floating platforms and hovering glyphs of light. Aliens moved along the platforms with fluid precision, their eyes flicking toward the human newcomers. Marlin caught sight of the waitress from the plaza. Her trembling had intensified, but now it carried a different rhythm urgent, almost like a warning. She didn't speak to him directly, but her gaze pierced him, and for the first time, he wondered if her quiver was less fear than a signal. He muttered under his breath. The moment passed as quickly as it came. They were escorted to a chamber where the council awaited. The aliens seated themselves in concentric rings, their limbs intertwined in ways humans couldn't fully comprehend. One of them, taller and more commanding than the others, inclined its head toward Marlin. "Human," it said in perfect galactic standard, "you seek work among us. You bring your child, yet you know nothing of our rules." "I am willing to learn," Marlin replied evenly. "I only ask to contribute, to survive, to care for my daughter." The council's eyes glowed faintly, scanning his posture, his tone, even his heartbeat. After a long pause, the tallest alien inclined once more. "Then you will enter our society not as a visitor, but as a participant. You will learn our customs. You will submit to our guidance." Marlin's stomach twisted. Submission wasn't part of his nature, yet refusal wasn't an option. To survive, he would have to play their game and play it well. The council's judgment came with a test, a challenge of perception and courage. He would have to navigate the night labyrinth, a living maze beneath the city, designed to unmask the deepest fears and intentions of any who dared enter. Those who failed returned changed or not at all. He turned to Lyra, who had grown pale but stood firm. "I'll go first. You wait here?" She nodded, squeezing his hand. "Be careful, Papa." Marlin stepped into the labyrinth. The walls pulsed with a faint heartbeat-like glow. Whispers echoed from the shadows, alien voices twisting words he almost understood. Every step felt heavier, as though the labyrinth weighed his conscience, measured his resolve. Then, a sound, soft, deliberate footsteps behind him, not his own. He froze, listening. The trembling waitress had followed him. Her eyes glimmered like twin moons in the darkness. She stopped a step away, her voice barely audible. "They're watching you, more than the council knows." Marlin's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, the ground shifted. Walls extended, narrowing the corridor. Strange shapes moved in the shadows, creatures of sinew and light, testing, probing. Marlin clenched his fists, forcing himself to breathe, to think, to survive. Somewhere deep inside, a surge of determination ignited. The challenge wasn't just survival, it was proving that humanity could adapt, endure, and rise, even in an alien world. But the labyrinth had only just begun. The labyrinth twisted around Marlin like a living thing, its walls pulsing faintly with bioluminescent veins that seemed to sense his every step. He moved cautiously, the weight of Lyra's safety pressing on his shoulders like armor. The trembling waitress walked beside him, her gait uneven, but her eyes burned with determination. "They're not what they seem," she whispered. "The council, they've already chosen who will survive and who will fail." Marlin frowned. "What do you mean?" "They test everyone. That's how you prove worth." Her eyes glimmered with something unreadable desperation. "No, the labyrinth isn't a test. It's a trap. Only those they favor escape. The rest?" She swallowed, and the quiver in her hands intensified. "Disappear." The words hit Marlin like a cold shock. His grip tightened on his daughter's small hand. Even though she was waiting above ground, unaware of the full danger he now faced, suddenly the ground beneath them trembled. Shapes emerged from the shadow's sleek, predatory forms, skin translucent and stretched over sinewy muscle. They moved like liquid limbs, bending in impossible ways. The labyrinth had sensed him. It was alive, and it had called its guardians. Marlin reached for a nearby wall, scanning for anything to use as a weapon. The waitress shook her head. No weapons will help. Only your mind. And your courage. He swallowed hard, taking a deep breath. Humans had always been underestimated. In the outer colonies, in pirate raids, in skirmishes with hostile species. Humanity survived because it could think when others panicked. Now was no different. The first of the Guardians lunged. Marlin sidestepped, barely avoiding a razor-sharp appendage. He grabbed a glowing pipe and swung, striking the creature. It recoiled, shrieking a sound that echoed like broken glass. Keep moving. The waitress urged, darting forward. Her hands trembled violently, but she moved with precision, signaling which paths were safe, as they advanced. Marlin noticed something disturbing. Symbols etched into the walls glowed briefly as they passed. He realized the labyrinth itself was marking them, tracking their decisions, recording their every action. Then, from the shadows, came the betrayal. A voice, familiar and chilling, echoed through the corridor. Marlin Hayes, did you really think you could navigate Clethera without interference? He froze. From the flickering light emerged an Aliana Herak officer he had seen in the market, the same one that had scanned them before. But it wasn't alone. The trembling waitress's eyes widened in shock, her quiver turning into a tremor of panic. She whispered, disbelief etched across her face. Marlin's stomach churned. Lysra, the very person who had seemed to guide them, was now aligned with the Herak. Betrayal cut sharper than any blade. Why? He demanded, his voice echoing through the labyrinth. Lysra's gaze was cold, almost mechanical. Survival isn't about helping humans. It's about proving loyalty to the Council. You should have stayed in your shuttle. You should have obeyed the rules. The labyrinth shifted violently, walls narrowing, corridors twisting. The Guardians advanced, encircling Marlin and the trembling waitress. Every exit closed, every safe path vanished. The waitress, whose name, Marlin now learned, was Vera, trembled harder than ever. I tried, she stammered, her voice breaking. I wanted to help, but I can't fight the Council. Marlin clenched his fists. Betrayal stung, but fear could not rule him. Humanity had faced impossible odds before and survived. Now he would have to do it again. He scanned the surroundings, noting the glowing conduits above and the pulsing walls. A plan formed, desperate and risky. If he could destabilize the labyrinth, even briefly, they might escape the Guardians and expose Lysra's treachery. Stay close, he told Vera, gripping her arm. Whatever happens, we survive. We find Lyra. Her trembling lessened slightly, replaced by a spark of determination. Together they crouched, readying themselves as the Herak and the Guardians advanced. The walls pulsed faster. The air vibrated with energy. And just as the first Guardian lunged, the labyrinth convulsed around them, its walls narrowing with an almost sentient malice. Marlin pressed Vera against the pulsing conduit, narrowly avoiding the swipe of a Guardian's elongated limb. The air was thick with charged ions, a scent of ozone burning in his nostrils. We have to move, he shouted, voice cracking under tension. Vera's trembling had become a staccato rhythm, almost like a signal butt, one he barely had time to interpret. A sudden rumble shook the corridor. The floor split beneath them, a jagged crack opening like a mouth. Marlin grabbed Vera, pulling her back as a Guardian fell into the abyss, shrieking. But the victory was fleeting. Another Guardian emerged from the shadows, its translucent skin reflecting the pulsing lights in terrifying patterns. Vera, there, he shouted, pointing to a glowing ventilation shaft above. We climb. They scrambled, Vera's hands slick with sweat as they gripped the slick walls. Every step was a gamble. The labyrinth shifted beneath them, corridors elongating or collapsing without warning. Marlin's heart pounded, but he forced himself to focus. Lyra's safety depended on him. Then came the blow he hadn't expected. Lysra appeared above them, perched on a high ledge like a predator. Did you really think you could outmaneuver me? She hissed. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the labyrinth's pulsing lights. The Council chose their prey. You're not among them. Marlin felt a chill. Vera's hands trembled violently, her voice almost a whisper. I can't, then don't, he snapped, though the desperation in his voice betrayed him. You can guide me. You already know the paths. Use it. Vera's eyes flickered, a moment of decision. She pointed toward a narrow tunnel veiled in near darkness. "Here, but it's dangerous. Only the brave survive." Marlin nodded, gripping her arm. "Then we survive." They plunged into the tunnel. The air was stifling, tinged with mineral scent and the faint metallic temps of ozone. The walls pulsed, now alive with the labyrinth's anticipation. Every step brought them closer to freedom or death. A sudden surge of energy erupted from the labyrinth itself, walls compressing, forcing them to hunch. A guardian lunged from above, its appendage swinging down with lethal precision. Marlin reacted instinctively, catching it with a metal conduit and sending it crashing into the wall. But even as they pressed forward, a deeper threat revealed itself. The labyrinth's corridors began to split, walls moving like living muscles. One path led down toward a pool of shimmering liquid, its surface reflecting Marlin's panic. The other led upward toward the distant glow of the exit, but Lysra blocked it. Her presence, an unyielding wall. Vera's hands trembled so violently now that Marlin realized the truth. She couldn't continue guiding them. He had counted on her knowledge of the labyrinth, her connection to its hidden paths. Without her, they were trapped. A shriek split the air. The guardians had surrounded them, cutting off every escape route. Marlin's chest tightened. For the first time in his life, the enormity of human vulnerability hit him with full force. Lyra's voice echoed in his memory. He closed his eyes, imagining her waiting above, trusting him to bring her safely through this alien hell. Desperation surged. He lunged for the nearest shifting wall, pressing his body against it. The walls responded, bulging outward, then snapping back like a living trap. A guardian struck, knocking him down. Pain flared in his side. He pushed himself up, ignoring it, and reached for Vera. "We're not done," he growled, teeth clenched. "We survive. We always survive." But Lysra's laughter echoed through the tunnels, chilling and absolute. "Even if you survive, you will not win. The Council will have their final judgment." Marlin's vision blurred as exhaustion and pain clawed at him. The labyrinth had him pinned, guardians circling like sharks. He realized the truth. He was at the brink of defeat, outmatched, and alone in a world designed to crush him. Yet somewhere deep inside, a spark refused to die. Humanity had faced impossible odds before: famine, disease, war, betrayal, and survived. He would not let this alien labyrinth, no matter how cunning, extinguish that spark. And then, just as hope seemed lost, a faint vibration under the floor echoed a pattern, almost like a signal. Something was coming, something that might change everything. The vibration beneath Marlin's boots was subtle at first, a rhythmic pulse that seemed almost alive. He pressed a hand to the wall, feeling the faint hum travel through the metal conduits embedded in the labyrinth, somewhere deep within Clythara's living architecture. A response had been triggered. Vera's hands trembled violently, but now there was a determination in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "It's a signal," she whispered. "Something, or someone, is coming to help." Marlin's pulse quickened. Every second had been a struggle, every step a gamble, but the faintest glimmer of hope had emerged from the shadows. "Then we follow it," he said, voice low and urgent. "Keep moving." They darted through a narrowing corridor, walls contracting and pulsing around them. Guardians lunged from the shadows, appendages slashing, but Marlin used his environment. He grabbed a pulsating conduit and swung it like a battering ram, knocking one creature off balance. Vera's trembling hands guided him past dead ends and collapsing floors, her intimate knowledge of the labyrinth proving indispensable above them. The faint vibration grew into a rhythmic pounding, echoing through the tunnels. Then, as if the labyrinth itself obeyed some higher command, a section of wall split open. A beam of brilliant white light illuminated the passage ahead, and Marlin blinked in shock. Standing there was a figure he hadn't expected, another human tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like polished steel. "Marlin Hayes," the man said, voice carrying a quiet authority. "I've been sent to extract you." The Council underestimated humanity. Marlin's jaw tightened. "Who?" "No time," the stranger interrupted. "Move together." They surged forward. The labyrinth shrieked in protest, walls snapping shut behind them. But Marlin's companion captain, Ryan, as he later learned, is a compact graphene device to hold back the closing walls long enough for them to pass. Guardians lunged, but Ryan's quick thinking and human ingenuity turned the tide. Vera's trembling began to subside, replaced with a fierce energy. I can help now, she said, guiding them past a particularly treacherous stretch where the labyrinth tried to collapse on them. Her knowledge, combined with Ryan's devices and Marlin's improvisation, created a synergy the labyrinth hadn't anticipated as they approached the surface. The corridors widened, and faint light from Clethara's twin suns spilled into the tunnel. Marlin's heart-leapt freedom was near, but the Herak and Lysra were not far behind. Lysra's silhouette appeared in the distance, arms crossed, expression calm but lethal. "You think your allies can save you," she called out. "The Council's judgment is absolute. Humanity cannot claim victory here." Marlin stepped forward, chest heaving, determination blazing. "Humanity never backs down. We fight, we adapt, we survive, and we will not be judged by alien whims." Ryan activated a pulse device that emitted a shockwave, destabilizing the labyrinth in just the right way. Guardians stumbled, walls bulged, and for the first time, the advantage shifted. Marlin grabbed Vera's hand, feeling the pulse of her confidence now merging with his own resolve. Together, they ran, dodging falling walls, leaping over chasms, and navigating twists the labyrinth itself seemed to create in desperation. Marlin's mind raced, calculating, improvising, finding paths that the Council hadn't foreseen. Humanity's instinct for survival, the same trait that had carried his species across the stars, was now a weapon. They burst through the final corridor, spilling onto the sunlit surface. The twin suns of Clethara glared down, illuminating the vast plaza. Marlin inhaled, tasting the alien air but feeling an undeniable sense of triumph. They were alive. They had survived, and yet Lysra's laughter echoed from the shadows, a reminder that the battle was far from over. Somewhere in the distance, the trembling Waitress, now standing tall and composed, caught Marlin's gaze. Her message was clear. The final confrontation was coming. Humanity had shown its strength, but the true test of ultimate victory was still ahead. The plaza trembled beneath the twin suns, casting long, jagged shadows across the obsidian tiles. Marlin stood at the center, flanked by Vera and Captain Ryan, facing Lysra and the Council's enforcers. The air hummed with energy, the pulse of Clethara itself responding to the conflict. "Humans," Lysra said, her voice a silky blade cutting through the air. "You trespass, you defy, you disrupt. The Council will punish you." Marlin's jaw tightened. "No," he said firmly. "Humanity does not bow to intimidation. We adapt, we survive, and we fight when necessary." Vera stepped forward, her trembling gaunt. Her hands, now steady, glimmered faintly as she raised them, manipulating the labyrinth's residual energy. The walls of the plaza seemed to pulse, bending reality slightly, as if the planet itself acknowledged her alliance with Marlin. "You don't understand," Lysra spat, summoning her guardians. The translucent predators lunged forward, their sinewy limbs slicing the air. Marlin dodged the first strike, grabbing a fallen conduit and swinging with precision. Ryan unleashed a pulse emitter, destabilizing the Guardians' energy fields. Sparks flew, creatures shrieked, and the plaza became a maelstrom of motion. Amid the chaos, Vera channeled energy from the labyrinth, creating a protective barrier around Marlin and Ryan. She glanced at Marlin, eyes bright. "I can't hold them forever, but together we can turn this around." Marlin nodded, heart pounding. Humanity had faced impossible odds before pirates, rogue AI. Hostile alien species and survived through ingenuity and sheer will. Now, in the heart of an alien world, that same instinct ignited. He sprinted toward Lysra, dodging a clawed strike. "This ends now," he shouted. Lysra lunged, but Marlin anticipated her movement, using his human adaptability to exploit a subtle shift in her stance. With a precise strike, he destabilized her pulse field, sending her staggering back. Ryan unleashed a series of coordinated blasts, taking down the remaining Guardians. Vera amplified the energy pulses from the labyrinth, binding the Council's enforcers in place. Slowly, the tide turned. What seemed insurmountable moments ago was now within reach. Lysra's glare burned into him. "You cannot win." Marlin stepped closer, chest heaving. "We already have. Humanity never gives up. We find a way when all seems lost. That's who we are." Vera's energy pulses surged one last time, and the plaza lit up with blinding radiance. The council's enforcers were thrown back, disoriented, and Lysra fell to her knees. The labyrinth itself seemed to sigh, as if releasing its grip on those it had tested. Silence fell. The twin suns reflected off the plaza's obsidian surface, bathing Marlin, Vera, and Ryan in golden light. Humanity had triumphed, not through brute force alone, but through courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding drive to protect and survive. Marlin turned to Vera, who now smiled faintly, her trembling completely gone. "You were shaken because you feared the council's corruption," he said softly, "but you helped us anyway. That's bravery." Vera nodded, voice steady. "Sometimes trembling is not weakness. It's the recognition of stakes too high to ignore. You reminded me of what it means to choose humanity over fear." Ryan clapped Marlin on the shoulder. "And that's why humans always find a way, even here on a world that wasn't built for us." Marlin's eyes shifted toward the horizon, where Lyra waited, watching from the safety of a secured enclave. Relief and triumph washed over him. Humanity had survived, adapted, and emerged victorious. And in the midst of alien worlds, among trembling allies and deceptive enemies, Marlin realized something profound. It wasn't just survival, it was proof. Proof that humanity could rise, even when the odds seemed insurmountable, and that courage and ingenuity could bend the universe's rules. The plaza was quiet now, the pulse of Clyotherus' labyrinth ebbing like a heartbeat returning to calm. Marlin took a deep breath, feeling hope and pride fill him in equal measure. The council had been bested, the labyrinth mastered, and humanity had triumphed, not just by strength, but by the indomitable spirit of a father determined to protect his child. The twin suns of Clethara rose higher in the sky, spilling warm light across the obsidian plaza. The aftermath of battle left the air heavy with a mix of charged energy and the faint metallic temps of the labyrinth's pulse. Marlin wiped sweat from his brow, glancing at Vera and Ryan for the first time in days. He allowed himself a moment to breathe. "Papa!" she cried, throwing her arms around his waist. Relief, joy, and the unspoken gratitude of survival radiated from her. "You're safe," Marlin whispered, hugging her tightly. "That's all that matters." Vera stood nearby, her trembling completely gone. The light of the suns reflected in her eyes, revealing a newfound calm. "The council. They will remember this day," she said softly. "A human has survived the labyrinth and defied their judgment. Others may learn from it." Marlin nodded. Humanity had always faced challenges that seemed insurmountable, from the first colonies in distant systems to conflicts with species that saw humans as fragile or inconsequential. Yet time and again, they had prevailed through determination, ingenuity, and the courage to act when no one else would. This victory is just the beginning. There will be other worlds, other tests, other councils, but humans have shown once again that they are not to be underestimated. Lysra's fate remained uncertain. She had been driven back into the shadows of the labyrinth, her enforcers disoriented and powerless for the moment. Marlin didn't rejoice in revenge. This was not about punishment. It was about survival, and humanity had proven it could stand among the stars as a force to be reckoned with. Vera glanced at Marlin. "You asked why I was shaken when we first met. Now you know it wasn't weakness. It was fear of what was to come. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it." Marlin smiled, a mixture of exhaustion and pride. "Then you're brave," he said, his voice quiet but full of respect. She nodded. "And so are you, Marlin Hayes. You reminded me what it means to choose action over hesitation. Humanity thrives on that choice." The labyrinth's pulse faded, retreating into the deep veins of Clythera, leaving the plaza calm and still. The alien world no longer felt hostile, but alive, watching, and perhaps even acknowledging the triumph of the humans who had survived its greatest test. Marlin lifted Lyra onto his shoulders, scanning the horizon. The city stretched endlessly, a maze of light and shadow, yet no longer intimidating. They had survived. They had proven that courage, determination, and ingenuity could overcome even the strangest of worlds, as they walked toward the rising suns. Marlin felt the weight of future challenges, but also the promise of them. Humanity was not fragile. Humanity would endure. Humanity would rise wherever it was tested, and somewhere deep in the labyrinth, a faint glow pulsed a reminder that Clethera held more secrets more challenges, and more opportunities for those willing to face the unknown. Marlin tightened his grip on Lyra's hand. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The suns climbed higher, bathing the plaza in golden light, a new day dawning for humans and allies alike on Clethara. The end.